Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Nick.
And I'm Emily. Thanks for tuning in. Today, we're talking about something that many language learners struggle with, but often feel too guilty to admit: taking breaks.
Yes, real, intentional breaks. The kind where you put your book down, close your app, and stop feeling like you're wasting time. Because here's the truth, rest is not the opposite of progress. It's part of it.
So if you've ever felt bad for taking a day off from studying, or if you've had that voice in your head saying, you're falling behind, today's episode is for you.
Let's start with a simple fact: the brain is not a machine. It can't go full speed, all the time, without rest. When you rest, especially after learning something new, your brain actually processes and stores that information.
Right? That's called consolidation. It happens when you sleep, or even when you relax. So technically, when you step away from English for a while, your brain is still working in the background, filing things away, making connections, and preparing you to come back stronger.
But I think the problem is, a lot of learners associate rest with laziness. They feel guilty for not doing enough. Where does that guilt come from?
Social pressure, for sure. And maybe unrealistic expectations. We live in a culture that glorifies constant productivity, especially online. You see people posting their language progress every day, showing off perfect pronunciation, streak counts, vocabulary journals. It can make you feel like you're falling behind if you don't do the same.
Yes. But that's not real life. What you don't see is everything behind the scenes. You don't see the burnout. You don't see the skipped meals or the sleepless nights. You only see the highlight reel.
Exactly. And learning isn't a race. It's a personal journey. That journey includes pauses. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do for your English is to step away from it for a bit.
So let's normalize taking breaks. Let's treat rest like part of the routine, not a failure in the routine.
One tip I always give learners is to schedule their breaks intentionally. Don't wait until you crash. Plan a day off. Plan an hour to go for a walk. Plan a weekend where you just enjoy English content passively, watch a show, listen to music, without taking notes or doing exercises.
Yeah, learning can be light and joyful. Every moment doesn't need to be intense or productive. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is breathe and let your brain rest.
And here's something interesting. Taking breaks can actually help reduce anxiety around language learning. When you're constantly pressuring yourself to improve, every mistake feels bigger than it actually is. But when you give yourself space to relax, you gain perspective. You remember why you started learning in the first place.
Yes. Sometimes that step back helps you reconnect with your motivation. Maybe you remember that you started learning English to watch your favorite shows without subtitles, or to travel, or to speak with new people. When you step away from the pressure and come back, you often return with more joy and curiosity.
And it's also about trust. Trusting that you're still making progress even when you're not actively studying. That your brain remembers, that your effort isn't lost. It's all still there, waiting for the next step.
Exactly. And think about this: have you ever had an aha moment while doing something unrelated to English? Like, you're in the shower, or walking your dog, and suddenly a grammar rule just clicks.
Oh, definitely. Or you randomly remember a word you learned weeks ago, without even trying. That's your brain processing quietly in the background, during those rest moments.
Which means rest isn't wasted time. It's invisible progress. It's the glue that holds your study efforts together.
So what does a healthy break look like for a language learner? I'd say, no guilt, no comparison, no strict timeline. Maybe you switch to a different kind of input, like watching a comedy show in English or journaling casually. Or maybe you don't engage with English at all for a couple days, and that's okay too.
And if you're someone who needs structure, you can still plan your breaks into your routine. For example, study Monday through Thursday and rest on Friday. Or set boundaries, like no English study after 8 p.m. Treat it like an athlete treats recovery. It's not optional. It's essential.
One more thing. Check in with your energy, not just your schedule. Some days you might feel great and ready to dive into English. Other days, you might feel drained. Listen to your body and your emotions. Language learning isn't just about the brain, it's about the whole self.
That's such a good reminder. And honestly, this mindset shift, from guilt to grace, can make the difference between burning out and staying consistent over the long run.
And remember, even professional athletes, musicians, and performers take breaks to avoid burnout. Why should language learners be any different? You're using mental energy, emotional focus, and time. It's natural to need rest.
Right. Let's normalize slowing down. Learning English isn't a sprint with a deadline. It's a journey, and you don't need to rush to prove anything. You're still a serious learner even when you're resting.
Exactly. And taking breaks can actually deepen your learning. When you stop cramming and start giving your mind space, things start to settle in more naturally. You'll retain more because you're not overwhelmed.
Let's also mention the difference between active breaks and complete rest. Some learners might enjoy switching to low-pressure English activities, like listening to a podcast while cooking or doodling in an English journal. Others might need a full reset, no English at all for a day or two. Both are valid.
And sometimes what you need is a break from the expectation to always be improving. It's not just about giving your brain a rest, it's about giving your heart a break too. Learning a language can bring up insecurity, doubt, and perfectionism. A pause helps soften all that.
Yes. You come back with a more balanced mindset, less anxious, more open. That's when learning starts to feel fun again. And let's be honest, when learning is fun, you naturally make faster progress.
So maybe we should all stop seeing breaks as falling behind, and start seeing them as part of the rhythm of learning. Like breathing in and out. Study, then rest. Push, then pause. It's all part of the same beautiful process.
If you're listening right now and feeling tired, mentally or emotionally, let this be your permission to step back for a bit. English will still be here when you return. And so will your progress.
And don't forget, even when you're taking a break, your brain might still be working quietly in the background. You might suddenly remember a word, or a phrase during your walk, or dream in English without even trying. That's your mind doing quiet work while you rest.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Learning isn't only about what you actively do. It's also about what your brain does when you're not looking, connecting ideas, organizing information, and building long-term memory. Rest fuels that.
Exactly. And honestly, rest can help you fall in love with learning again. When everything starts to feel like pressure, study schedules, grammar drills, speaking anxiety, you lose the joy. But after a break, even 5 or 10 minutes, you often return with a fresh sense of curiosity.
And that curiosity is powerful. It's what drives real learning. Not guilt, not perfectionism, curiosity. That moment when you want to know what a word means or how to say something better. That can't happen if you're exhausted or burned out.
Totally. So taking a break doesn't mean you're weak, it means you're wise. You're paying attention to yourself. And that's one of the best things you can do on this learning journey.
And if you ever feel guilty about it, just ask yourself, would I treat a friend this way? Most likely, no. You'd encourage them to rest, to breathe, to take care of themselves. So do the same for you. You're worth that kindness.
That's such a helpful mindset, treating yourself the way you'd treat someone you care about. Because the truth is, learning a language is not just about words and grammar, it's also about how we treat ourselves while doing it. If we're constantly pushing, criticizing, and stressing, we lose the connection to why we started in the first place.
Exactly. And breaks can help you remember that why. Sometimes, during rest, you'll find yourself thinking about your goals again, not in a pressured way, but in a calm, inspired way. Like, oh yeah, I wanted to learn English so I could travel, or I wanted to connect with people around the world. Breaks give you space to remember the purpose behind the process.
And that makes it so much easier to return with motivation instead of resistance. When you take a healthy pause, your comeback often feels lighter and more exciting, not like you're dragging yourself back into something hard.
Right. And let's be honest, language learning isn't a sprint. It's more like a long hike. If you don't stop to drink water and admire the view, you're just going to collapse halfway through. But if you pace yourself, take breaks, and enjoy the process, you actually make it to your destination.
I love that metaphor, a long hike with water breaks and scenic views. It really puts things in perspective. Because when we look at people who seem fluent or super confident in English, we often forget that they took plenty of breaks too. We just don't see those moments of rest, those pauses behind the scenes.
Totally. And we also don't see the internal battles they went through, the doubt, the fatigue, the frustration. But they kept going because they allowed themselves to slow down when needed. Progress doesn't always mean moving forward fast. Sometimes, it just means not quitting.
Yes. And here's something interesting. Your brain actually continues learning while you're resting. That's been shown in studies. When you take a break, your brain processes and organizes what you've been studying. So that guilt we feel when we rest, it's really misplaced. Rest isn't laziness. It's part of the learning cycle.
Exactly. Like when you sleep after studying, and the next day things somehow make more sense. The same idea applies to short breaks, weekend pauses, even unplugging for a whole week. It gives your brain space to do the quiet work.
So if you're listening to this right now and feeling like you should be studying, maybe this is your sign to take a breath. A real one. Your English journey will still be here when you come back, and you might return even stronger than before.
That's right. So the next time you feel that pressure to keep pushing, even when you're tired, just remember, taking breaks doesn't mean giving up. It means you respect your energy, your mind, and your long-term growth. Learning English is not a sprint. It's a life skill, and life needs balance.
Exactly. So take that break without guilt. Rest with intention. And trust that it's helping you move forward, even when it feels like standing still. Your mind is absorbing, repairing, preparing. That's powerful.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode helped ease a little pressure and reminded you that peace is part of progress.
We'll be back soon with more tips, encouragement, and real talk for your English learning journey. Until then, stay kind to yourself and remember, rest is part of learning.
See you next time.